Alright, it's day 50. It's the fourth episode of this plant growing series, growing fall gold raspberry cuttings. And this thing at the bottom, it's just a shoot. I was thinking it may be a primocane in the beginning, but I don't think that's the case. And this node is sprouting rather nicely. It looks like the node above it is trying to sprout, but I think that's just some kind of feature or anomaly in the bark. Spikes don't grow, they were already there, and the foliage at this node and the two above it have done really nicely. I don't know how long this is going to go on for, and by saying that I don't mean that the series is going to end anytime soon. I just mean how long is this foliage going to slowly bush out like this from all the nodes? Is it going to elongate and get long and fall over? Or are primocanes going to come out of the bottom at some point? It's got to have some place to put new foliage, or is it just going to do this forever and ever? It seems like it's just doing this. It's been 2 months, so the series has gone on for 2 months, and compared to the California wild grape cutting series that I did, I think maybe that was 2014 or 2015. That one took a whopping 39 days just to get somewhere, just to get a little bit of, actually I think at that point it had roots coming out of a spot that was above the water line. I had it in a cup of tap water, and the tap water soaked up for a length of a few centimeters or inches maybe above the water line. And that was where the roots sprouted. I remember there being dozens and dozens of chubby little white roots. So in this case, it's just a commercial product. I have no idea what's going on underground. These leaves at the top look a little funny and deformed, but I guess everything that came out of this top node was always a bit deformed like that. So it's day 53. And as I was saying, with this top node, the foliage looked like it was burned a little bit after I first bought it. If you go back and look at the first episode, or if you remember that, and all those burned leaf parts are still there on display. And then you have a really big leaf there that's almost singular at the top. It's almost like maybe a maple leaf, and everything else is a three-pronged compound leaf, I guess. So like the passion fruit vine, there are anomalies everywhere in leaf development. It's not always going to go perfectly like you would expect it to. I basically expect the leaves of my plants to all look the same, especially this early on, but notice that that clearly isn't the case. So this will be a very green and bushy stick after a while. But yeah, the California grapevine series, that cutting was done in clear glass of tap water. It took forever. I think this has had a much better result and proves that you don't need to soak things in water. I'll just plant it in moist ground, or in this case it's just Miracle Grow potting mix from years ago, I guess. I don't know. I've lost track of which batch of potting mix and which pots has been used for what and how old it is and whatnot. So it's day 58 and the growth continues, and now we have a more normal looking compound leaf out of the top. So some of you may be bored at this point thinking, well, it's just doing the same thing over and over, but as you've seen with many of my plant growing series, when things go wrong, then you wish for days like this when everything's going right. So I'm just enjoying this series as I watch it pump out more and more leaves. It's been very, very pleasant to look at a time, especially when everything else on my balcony was going wrong. The passion fruit vine died. The mango seedling stalled after I think just 37 days, and then it was all downhill from there. So I'm trying that again, and I'm trying it in clay loam, wild neighborhood hill dirt, and hopefully that will have much better results. And I've left most of the tiny pebbles and sticks and root fragments and whatnot in there. But basically, I think it'll do much better than potting mix because I've had all this potting mix for quite a while, and it seems like, especially last year and the year before, I just got off to very, very slow starts for all my plants. I think that was because I sterilized the potting mix, so there's no microbes. It would take quite a while for random spores to land in and form mycorrhizal fungi relationships with the roots of my plants. And potting mix is just quite unnatural. It's basically you're planting your plants in a rotting heap of wood chips and bark and twigs and things like that. So typically in nature, it's supposed to be leaves lying on top of the soil that leach nutrients into the soil over time as it rains. And in this case, well, I guess potting mix never, I mean, it doesn't always go wrong. I mean, clearly it's growing in this case. It's maybe not growing that fast, but I don't know how fast a cutting like this is supposed to grow and what kind of progress other people are getting at a similar time point after, say, 58 days, 60 days. So up to this point, I've been doing just flood watering from the top down, and then I wait for it to drain. But I stop when I see water coming into the watering tray. So that's been my modus operandi. Maybe every 2 weeks, 10 days sometimes, but never more frequent than that. It's a small pot, and I hope that the root ball or the root system takes up the entire pot pretty soon and forms a big root ball, because in the past, as with my sweet Annie plant and others that have done that and colonized the entire pot and started circling around the pot, at that point the plant's largely indestructible in terms of being able to tolerate any kind of watering, overwatering, whatever you can throw at it. In fact, they seem to never get enough water at that point, or never be able to be quenched. So the foliage looks great now. It just keeps chugging along, and I don't really have any complaints. I haven't fertilized, but then again, I've fertilized this little pot of soil in the past. I think this one was used for my century plant last, because all the other pots look differently, so that's the only association that I could form. So in the future, I'll use smaller pots for my plant growing series. But you can see another pot in the background. I haven't launched that series yet, and those were, well, let's just say the seedlings have stayed small for a while, but so I'll show you later on. I basically did some squirt bottle watering, and that stopped the malaise, and then they took off and started perking up within 20 minutes and started growing some more later. So the foliage on the bottom is doing nicely. It's not doing that kind of annoying plant behavior, well, garden potted plant behaviors, where the foliage just drags on the ground and gets wet on the mud or wet potting mix and just rots away. So the fact that everything's really, really perky means I think the root system is very healthy. So it's day 63, and regarding what I was talking about just a minute or two ago, if you look at those seedlings in that big pot to the right, many of them were just drooping, and one of them had its leaf in the potting mix buried a little bit from a previous watering session where I just took the watering can and showered everything on the surface and let that all sink in and kept repeating that. So for whatever reason, I just tried to use a squirt bottle after seeing all of that and the leaves not responding, not being hydrated. And in that pot, the seedlings perked up immediately within 20 minutes, and they kind of took off after that. So I think maybe by squirting water in directly, you're washing off whatever's ailing the root system, and you're also injecting air directly in there violently. So maybe that just aerates the root system and enables the roots to grow. The root system is the most important thing. I think in most of my cases, by the time I noticed something wrong with the shoot system, the root system was already long dead.